Welcome, drummers. Garey Williams here, your drum set mindset coach and creator of the Drumset Artistry Mastermind group. It's now over 800 members. It's an awesome group. I'm glad you're a member of it. Today, I want to talk to you about groove. What does groove mean? Will I ever be able to groove? How good is my groove? Does my groove feel good? These may be questions you're asking yourself. I can remember my first experience on trying to deal with this concept of groove. It was a really vague term. It got thrown around a lot, especially in college, where somebody would come and hear a group rehearse and say, well, it's just not grooving. And that used to just really frustrate the heck out of me, because it's like, well, what is groove? When you say this word groove, I mean, is it groovy? Is it? I just didn't understand what the term groove meant. So I'm going to give you a definition. There are three components to groove. Number one, it's a steady tempo. Number two, it's a change in dynamics. And number three, it's a change in feel. Well, that's nice to know. So how do we do all these things? Well, there are details to getting all these little subtleties together to kind of help make your time feel groovy. The difference between a drum beat and a drum groove is pretty significant. What do you mean when you say just a drum beat? Well, that's a pattern, and certainly you can play a drum beat pattern and repeat it over and over. But what makes it turn into a groove? That gets into personality, to feel, to something that is kind of hard to put into words. I had a college professor I've mentioned before. He would describe things as some things can't be taught, they have to be caught. And so it takes a while to develop the sense of making something feel good if it doesn't feel good for you. My first experience in really trying to refine my groove was spending time with the metronome. So, a lot of drummers wonder, they're worried about their groove, like they'll privately panic, like maybe I'm going to rush. And they do experience rushing, and maybe some of the other band members say, man, you always speed up. Or especially during fills, that's the area where most people get freaked out and kind of think that fills have to be some sort of drumming display rather than actually another form of timekeeping and wanting to serve the music. So I started practicing with the old tick-tock metronomes, and I was probably working mostly on snare drum stuff. I don't remember, because I evolved into an electronic metronome after that, but I do recall trying to play with it, and of course you couldn't really hear it, so I couldn't really fine tune my sense of timing, let alone work on feel and quote groove, because I couldn't hear the metronome. Then I got a nice little Dr. Beat with a headphone jack, and then put the headphones on or turned it up. It was actually louder, and it had some features that allowed me to understand more about grooving. And then eventually I graduated to an actual drum machine, which was quite a bit nicer than just this static kind of click sound, because I could actually program bass parts or percussion parts and parts that would actually be musical. And that's the other aspect. When you are thinking about playing a drum beat, you're kind of thinking more about things in a mechanical standpoint. When you're thinking about playing a groove, your mind will focus more to playing in a musical standpoint. So my clients that work with me and they're trying to figure out ways to get their groove to feel better really realize that they can't just take my word for it. They have to experience what it's like to hear themselves on the playback. So that's one of the key things, is recording yourself playing along to either a click and then listening back to see if you're rushing or you're dragging, and what are your tendencies. Am I somebody that likes to rush because I get excited and I just want to play faster? You just need to hear these things so you can kind of lay back when you get to those points that excite you and not let yourself be distracted by the excitement and really go for it. One of the drummers that influenced me growing up was Stuart Copeland of the Police, and he said he used to hate to play with the metronome or the click track. It's the same thing, because every time he would get to the chorus of the tune, it would feel like the song is slowing down, because he'd always want to rush. I don't think he has that problem today, because so much music is based on playing with sequencers and music that's already programmed and steadily in time. So it's a process. It definitely is going to take some time. So perhaps you've experienced some of the same frustration, and maybe you've asked the question, dang, I don't even really know where to start. I mean, I can play with the metronome at one tempo, or maybe you're even afraid to play with the metronome. This especially comes up in recording situations where some of my clients will be in bands and maybe they haven't spent as much time on their own time working with the metronome, and then they get into the recording environment and they want it to sound professional, which means they're not just going to be rushing and dragging. It's going to sound like pros. The time's going to stay steady. I've spent hours in the studio. I'm on, probably 50 to 75 commercial CDs, always recorded with the click track. There's never a time when I don't. So it's really important to get comfortable. And in fact, I can remember doing a session with a big band, and we got all the sounds set up, and then the leader of the band comes in and said, oh, by the way, we're going to record everything with a click. And I was like, great, because I was so comfortable with it. But many of the musicians hadn't spent time with the metronome, and so they were very awkward. And you may be experiencing this too with your bandmates that don't spend time with the metronome, and they point to you and say, you're the reason the time isn't happening. And of course, that's not the truth. Certainly if you record the group playing and then you listen on the playback, it's going to be obvious who's rushing and who's dragging. So if you really don't feel like you know the right strategy to develop your time, so I'm saying, no, play with the click, great, or play with a drum machine, great. So how do you do that? How do you practice with the time? Well, these are some of the things that I can help you with. So many of my clients really get frustrated because they feel like they don't have a good sense of time, or maybe the feel isn't great. And there are all these little subtleties that I've arrived at over the many years of examining my playing in many recording situations, and then getting some positive feedback from other people about what they like about my playing. And usually the feel is one of the things that most people really enjoy. And it's because I've spent a lot of time trying to make my music sound as expressive as possible. In fact, I mentioned this before in another video where one of my teachers, Jeff Hamilton, made the comment. He said, there are two kinds of people that choose the drums. There are drummers that pick the drums, and there are musicians that pick the drums. And the difference between just playing a beat versus grooving has to do with whether you're just focused on being a drummer versus being a musician. So if you would like some more help, if you're at the point where you're really ready to start addressing your sense of time and groove, and you want to get deeper into this thing that you hear about but really don't understand it, then you should private message me. I certainly can help. We can see if we're a good vibe, a good match to work together, because I have so many tips that I can share with you and save you a massive amount of time. And that's really what I'm here for, is to be of service to you, speed this process up so that you're not struggling, you're not sitting there frustrated, insecure, doubting yourself. As I used to, I've worked through all these issues, and I can help you as I do my other clients. So get a hold of me and let's make some progress, and let's do this now, because I want to help you improve your groove. I will see you again on Thursday for my next little Facebook Live, and we'll have some question and answer period coming up, because I'd like to have some interaction with some people, and usually there's a little more activity on Thursday mornings. And so I look forward to seeing you guys then. Until then, continue to practice, be nice to yourself, and I will see you in the group for more Mastermind wisdom. Take care.